Anyways, thank you again, everyone, for being here. And we're here with myself, Steve, Eric, Dennis, and our special guest, Staff Sergeant David Nabinger. So, again, thank you for being here, and it's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
And you've got some awesome stories. I had the privilege of meeting you at the Shriners event that we were at now almost a couple months ago now, right?
Yeah, back in January.
Back in January, and that was a fun event. But we had our tables, the Army table and our table were right next to each other, and we just had a wonderful a lot of chats actually, and just so happened that we talked about everything, and you were more than willing to come on. So, and you've got amazing stories, and we'll just kick it right off. Would love to hear your background, where you grew up, education, all that stuff, and we'll get to know you a little more.
Okay, awesome. So before I begin, just if I go too long or whatever, just stop me. I'm an extrovert. Like, I love to talk, as we Shriners place.
We love that here, so we're good.
So I am Staff Sergeant Nabinger. I was born in Detroit, Michigan at St. John's Hospital over there off Moross. By the time that I was about 6 years old, my mother had met someone else, decided to go to his home country, and that we were obviously in poverty, very poor. We would walk to the local party store and like, hey, can I get a couple of loaves of bread and we'll pay you back, and then hide from them, sort of ordeal. So the schools noticed that I wasn't wearing any socks or any socks that were usable. So just the way things ended up going, she put us into social services. The idea was that my father would pick us up after a couple of weeks, who at the time we didn't know exactly where he was at. She took off overseas, and the fun began. And I'll get into more of that, I guess, a little bit later.
Yeah.
So around the age of 10, she came back for us. Kind of living here and there, living there and here, and I would end up getting back with some of my foster parents, and just really not being focused. I ended up getting a GED after attending a couple of high schools, and just transcripts being a problem. Worked for various places, and I just wanted to break this cycle that seemed to be going on around me with friends and family and whatnot. And I remember seeing the commercials on TV, be all you can be. And I walked into the Dearborn recruiting station. It was on, I guess it doesn't matter, but it was in Dearborn. I explained to the recruiter that, one, I didn't know if they accepted GEDs, but he said, yes, we do. And I told him I needed him to transform this nerd, because I was a big tech geek, into the guy in the picture who was like in the mud with a weapon. And I really needed something. I knew that the Army got you out of the state. I knew that they would send you places. I didn't know too much about it. And I signed up. I enlisted in February of 1999. I enlisted as a combat engineer. I went to my first duty station at Fort Hood, Texas. So my first plane ride ever was to go to basic training. Wow. And after basic training, went to Fort Hood, Texas. First time in Texas, absolutely loved it. And after doing my 3 years, I came back to Michigan. Wasn't really working out. I went back into the Army in 2004, and I got to go to Germany. Landed in Frankfurt, Germany. Absolutely loved it. Decided to stay there. In 2011, I left active duty. I went into the Army Reserve, and I became a German resident. So, like people here that have green cards, I have a German green card. Stayed there till 2019 when the Army called me up to say, hey, do you want to go back home and tell your Army story? I said, absolutely. They said, where do you want to go? Send me home. So I'm back here in Westland, Michigan as an Army recruiter. So since being in, I received my bachelor's in English from University of Maryland Global Campus. I have been to Iraq 2005, 2006, 2008, 2009. I am a staff sergeant. I've been all over Europe, from Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania, Poland, Bulgaria. Spent leisure time all over Europe, and I'm here now talking to you.
That is well traveled. No, that is yeah. I mean, that's for a kid that probably didn't go much of anywhere to do all that. I mean,
no, I've looked it up, and I guess you'd have to Google it. But the statistics of a young man who is missing the father in the home and is brought up in a broken home or ends up in social services, the chances of them being locked up is like somewhere around the park of like 8 out of 10.
wow.
So for myself, when I look back at maybe the troubles that I could have gone into or the other directions that I could have gone into, I've been very fortunate, mainly through the foster parents that I had. A lot of the moral characters of who I am come from them. Maybe it's internal, maybe it's in my soul, I don't know. But I've always knew what right and wrong were, and I've always wanted to just be more than what I was expected to be. I want that notch in the entire history of man, for me to have some type of story within there other than just grow up, get a job, work, die, and that's it. I want I want to leave something behind. I'm married. My wife is German. We have 2 wonderful daughters, and they're bilingual. We brought them from Germany last year, and I want them to leave with something that their father is somebody who's well established, honored, and yeah.
That in that legacy and more. I always look at it too as like the example.
Yeah.
That you leave not only on your family, friends, and all that, but people who, I mean, even just who are listening and whatnot. I mean, what can be done through a hardship? What can actually come out of it? What, and it doesn't necessarily have to be military, obviously, but what someone, I mean, you could have easily just given up, but you didn't.
I have a brother who is in prison for the rest of his life. Him and I are about a year apart, and he found comfort in the gangs in Detroit. Was sent down into Ohio. I think for him and I, we were looking for some type of stability and family, or a sense of belonging where it wasn't shared upon. I don't know how to explain it any other way, but if you grow up in a home and you're not really part of the origins of that home, you always feel like there's like you're not as loved as the other, right? And so, and just for me, not speaking for everybody, but for myself, when I joined the Army, I was part of the same group of men and women who had the same family structure in a sense. So we were all privates. We were taken care of exactly the same. So instead of me thinking like, oh, because this is the biological child of somebody else, they're getting special privileges, right? Mm-hmm. So with us all being together, I found a different camaraderie in a family, and we were just wearing this uniform. And I think that's because I was thinking about it on the drive up here. Like, why did I stay in? I could have left every 3 years. I could just leave. And it is that family that I have within the organization where we're all the same. To whereas in growing up in my own broken home, I have and nothing against my own family, but when you have half brothers and half sisters, or you have foster brothers, foster sisters, adopted, but you're not really on the same playing field, in my view, And then I found that when I eventually got into the Army. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Completely. And the Army gave you that structure and gave you, and I mentioned earlier, my brother went into the Marines. I have a really good friend who was in the Marines. Even my daughter, I mentioned too that last year she went to that military camp, and she even mentioned that, like, you know, nobody's special here. It's you are at the same level,
exactly,
and that's how you bond. And yeah, I mean, it's I've seen so many good things come out of that. So many other friends and family that say the same thing.
When I explain to parents, because we get a lot of parents in my office, I try to explain to moms and dads is we're not taking your child away from you so that they're on their own. We're becoming their mom and dad away from you. So we're making sure that they get their dental appointments, their optometry appointments, that they're getting their education, that they have a roof over their head, that their rooms are clean. Like we check your rooms in the Army, would you believe it? Right, for health and welfare. We make sure that they have their vaccinations. We make sure that everything is well prepared for them, including finances, anything that's legal. So that's where I say, like, we become your parent. And for a young parent, and I don't know if he has children, but even myself having kids, I want them, when I pass them on, I want them to be well taken care of. And so that's what another thing that it gave me. And like I said, we were all in the same playing field. My parents were basically the Army. So
yeah, and it and even after, or at least I see this, even after you I guess leave or you're out of the Army and or any military, I mean, you still have that. They still right. I mean,
so, your battle buddies, as we call it in the Army, every branch has their own thing, but your battle buddies who you have that camaraderie with, they stick with you forever. Like, they become more than brothers, more than sisters, especially if you go on a deployment. But how they take care of you when you leave. So we have, like, 6 months before you get out, they're informing you how to develop a resume. No organization on the planet prepares you to quit the job, right?
To get
to leave
else,
the job. Like, hey, you're leaving, so bye.
Here's how you do it.
They make sure they give you classes on how to save your money before you leave. Like, are you going to be prepared? This is what you do for your VA. This is what you do for your education. This is what you do if you want to apply for a federal job versus a civilian job. And if you are applying for this is how you write it. Don't use Army jargon, you know. So I find that pretty neat.